Hi class, this is Mr. Tan, and today we're doing organisational behaviour. And what are we focused on now?
D1, D2, D3.
Good. We are focusing on now on the distinction criteria. So we're moving pretty fast, and we're doing D1, D2 and D3. And before we start answering the question, what do we do?
Break it down.
Good, we break the questions down. So let's look at D1 first. D1 says, draw conclusions and recommendations with valid justifications for planning effectively for change and applying change impact analysis. So, what are the key word or words here, please?
Conclusion and recommendation.
Good, thank you, Joe. Conclusions and recommendations. What are conclusions? A summary of what you want, okay? What are recommendations, Stephen? Recommendations, suggestions. Thank you, Stephen. So recommendations are basically suggestions you have made from your conclusions, okay? What's the next thing that we need to do in this question? What's the next thing we need to understand?
Understand what change.
Good. Thank you, Vera. We need to understand what change impact analysis is. So the question really is, what is change impact analysis? So, the links are on your online slide. Change impact analysis. What do you think the wording means? What does it say, change impact analysis? So what are we doing here? If you just think about the name, work it out. What's happening?
So there's a change in what impact it has.
Yes, that's it. Change impact analysis is, in a sense, saying, if we make a change here, how is that going to affect other parts of the business? And if we don't take into consideration how that's going to affect other parts of the business, could that have a negative effect or positive effect on the productivity, efficiency, or costs, or lean, or anything else in terms of the business and people? Okay? How many times do people just say, we're changing this, without looking at the impact it could have on other areas of the business? Have you seen that in your own workplace? Yeah. And what do you think of that? Do you think that people do change impact analysis and look at it from a wider perspective? No, they don't, do they? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that is?
Because they're not good enough.
Say it again, Joe.
Well, the management is not
Competent.
not working well.
Not some, maybe, but you know what the answer is. The answer is sometimes the management don't understand other departments and how other departments work, because they haven't experienced other departments, and so because they haven't experienced other departments, they don't know the effect it's going to have. So what are some companies trying to do now with their management staff, senior, middle management, and graduates? Training, and what do you say, Joe?
Cross-training.
What do you mean by cross-training?
Is that the different people coming from, let's say, sales department,
Yes,
and gas
yes,
to do
good.
another department.
Excellent. Moving people around in different roles. So my son, he works for Direct Line in the data analysis in Bromley. And he has to move to Bromley, he has to move to West Yorkshire and Leeds, the head office in Leeds, to work on a data call centre for 6 months. And what Direct Line are actually doing is, they're making their graduate trainees move from different locations in different parts of the country in different functional areas. So he's working in the data analysis area, he then has to work in the customer service area for 6 months, and then he'll probably work in another area for 6 months, and so on and so forth. What's that helping him to do? Helping him to understand how the whole business and different functions and departments work. Now, because he's going to be doing it, he's going to understand their process and their procedures. So, if eventually he's in senior management and he has to make a change, what is he going to know? He's going to understand the impact it's going to have on other areas of the business. Okay? Impact analysis. So this is what impact analysis is basically about. Let me show you the procedures for the impact analysis. So 3 basic procedures for impact analysis, which includes understanding the possible implications of the change. Change often produces a large ripple effect. Stifling too much functionality into a product can reduce its performance at unacceptable levels. So what are the possible implications? If you don't have experience in other functional areas, what can you do to understand? What can you do? To gain understanding, what can you do? You can do what? You can have a meeting and invite other departmental managers into that meeting and say, this is the change that we're hoping to do, and then what's going to be the impact on your area of the business? Because you may not have the expertise to know. So you can then bring other managers in. And if you, as being senior managers, this is something that you need to think about yourselves. If, especially you're going to be having your whole company. So your whole company, you have to think about bringing people in to get them to delegate it out and to get them to look at the impact analysis on certain things that decisions you may take. Yeah? Number 2 is to identify all the files, models and documents that might have to be modified if the team incorporates the requested change. Okay? So what needs to change? What procedures? What manuals? What modules? What files need to change? Documentation in different departments, in administration, in IT, in marketing. What needs to change if you do this? So if I bring out a new product code, okay, who is that going to, if I bring out a new product, how is that going to affect IT?
It's going to affect it because first of all, they have to capture it into their database.
Good. They have to create the right fields and the description fields and the area in the database that can do this and associate a field to a specific description. How is that going to affect administration? Administration has to know about the new product, don't they? If you have customers calling them and they're asking about this new product and they don't know about it, that's not very good customer service, is it? So you may need to do staff training for the administration department on this new product in terms of the product features and benefits. Otherwise, they can't answer any questions on it and they've never seen it. And they say, well, sales and marketing never told us. We haven't got a clue. Do you understand? So, you know, if you affect one thing in one area, it's going to affect other functional areas. And number 3, identify the tasks required to implement the change and estimate the effort needed to complete those tasks. Change impact on these 3 aspects. So, in a company that I worked for was Metro Products. They used to sell mechanical security devices to Halfords and B&Q. And Halfords came to them and said, in 1 year's time, we need you to have ISO 9002, which was a quality standard, as requested by the government. And if you don't have this, we will no longer buy from you. So, what do you think the company did? They hired a QAA, quality assurance manager, and they said, your task is to get us ISO 9002 within 1 year so that we can continue selling our products to Halfords. That meant the whole company had to change what they were doing, their policies, their procedures, every single department, including marketing. I was head of marketing and I had 9 people underneath me. And in the marketing department, for every process, main process and procedure, we had to write documentation, stages 1 to 20, every single stage, so that if I wasn't there, that could be carried out by someone else coming in. And then, if there was a change to the document, those documents had to be amended, and there had to be an amendment change document to show what day you changed this, and a new document. Every single piece of paper had a code on it, and every code was referenced to the latest version, version 2, version 3, documentation, documentation, and documentation. And who had to do all that? Yeah. Me! So if I'm now doing all this documentation, and I've got a year to do all the documentation, which then needs to be completed for all my procedures in marketing, then it needs to be okayed and agreed with the QAA manager, so it meets the QAA standards, so how they can pass. So I don't want them to come back and say, sorry, marketing department failed your QAA. What would happen if I said, I failed the QAA? What would happen to me? I'll be looking for a new job, wouldn't I? So now I've got all my other work. I've got 9 people to manage, and I've got all this QA documentation to do as well. Yeah? Do you see what's going to be the impact? What am I going to need? Maybe some more time? Maybe some help, perhaps? Yeah? Maybe a bigger budget in the department for that help? Do you understand? Does that make sense? So when you're looking at this, you need to explain what impact analysis is. Okay, let's go back to the question. Of course, the question says, draw conclusions and recommendations. Draw conclusions and recommendations with valid justifications for planning effectively for change and applying change impact analysis. So, if you're applying it to ASDA, yeah, you must take a specific example in ASDA. Because you can't talk about it generally. You have to relate it to a specific instance. So you would say, as a manager in a store in ASDA, or it could be a supervisor, what would be the impact if he decided to reduce the number of staff on the tills between this time and have more staff stocking the shelves, or vice versa?
Well, you will have, for instance, a long queue
Yes.
at checkout,
Yes.
for instance.
But that's the impact, do you understand? But what I'm trying to say is, to answer this question, you must give a specific example. It could be any example in store. Do you understand? Any example in store, but you must give a specific... Give me some examples